Very good evening. Good evening to everyone present here. Um, Before we begin, I would just like to test the interpretation channel. Um, may I just guide you on the interpretation process? At the bottom of the your laptop or your phones, you will see a symbol like globe. You can kindly click on it and choose your language of preference. So we have translations in both English and Spanish. I'd like to welcome all of you to today's session on Indigenous women at EMRIP. Thank you so much for making your time to be here with us today. Before we begin, we would like to start with an invocation. So I kindly request Sister Hortensia Simon to lead us and to open today's session. Sister Hortensia, over to you.
Gracias. Buenos días.
Thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. I want to thank Femi for this invitation to guide this moment before developing this EMRIP.
Quiero invitarles a que me acompañen
I
en la
invite
forma que cada una de
you all
ustedes lo hace.
in the
Yo lo
way all
haré
of you
desde la
do it.
cosmovisión maya.
I'll do it
Por ello, invocaré
since
a
the
las energías del
cosmovision,
Nahual,
Maya
el
cosmovision. I
Ejectl,
want
que
to invocate
significa el noveno
all of the
nivel de
energies
la red
of
espiritual,
our
en la que
ancestors.
guardamos y desarrollamos nuestros
And we want to
pensamientos, sentimientos,
develop
palabras y
our feelings,
acciones,
emotions,
que nos
words, and
permite
actions
experimentar la
that
verdadera
allow
libertad
us to
física y
experiment
espiritual.
the true freedom,
También es
the
la
true physical
oportunidad para
and
seguir
spiritual freedom.
tejiendo
It's
la
also
red
the
que nos
opportunity
permita ser
to
más
continue
fuertes,
weaving
más
the
unidas
network,
y más
to be
estratégicas en el
stronger,
trabajo que desarrollamos
to
en
work
nuestras
together,
comunidades,
and to have more
para
strategies in the
seguir
world we
defendiendo
develop in our
nuestros
communities,
derechos como
to keep
pueblos
on developing our
y como
rights
mujeres
as
indígenas. Y que no nos
as
enredemos
indigenous
cuando el sistema cuestiona
women.
nuestra forma de ser y de vivir.
And so
Y
this
que
is
sigamos
important for
trabajando
not
y
having
construyendo
difficulties in the
colectivamente,
system we live
siguiendo la luz,
in which we live
las
right now.
huellas y
And we
los
need to
pasos de
follow the
nuestras
light,
ancestras y
the
ancestros,
steps of
abuelas
our
y abuelos,
ancestors,
hermanas y hermanos que han
grandmothers,
abierto y siguen
grandfathers,
abriendo
brothers
caminos,
and sisters
que hoy están
who opened
compartiendo sus experiencias y
and continue
conocimientos
to
para
open
seguir
more
avanzando.
ways and sharing their
Así que
experiences
agradecemos
to
al
move ahead.
universo por la vida,
So I
por
want
la
to
salud,
thank the
por la
universe
oportunidad de
for our lives,
encontrarnos y
the
conectarnos a
health,
través de este medio, para
to
seguir
connect and
aprendiendo
to meet
y
through this
desaprendiendo.
mean and to
Gracias
keep
por
on
nuestra
learning.
salud y la articulación de nuestro cerebro, nuestro corazón
Thanks for
y
the
nuestro
articulation of
cuerpo.
our health and our brain,
Gracias a las
our
energías
heart
y
and
al
our body.
espíritu de la Madre
Thanks
Tierra,
to the
al
energies
Padre
and the
Aire, a la Abuela
Mother
Luna,
Earth
por el
Spirit,
agua, al Abuelo
to the
Sol y al
Grandma
Sagrado
Moon,
Fuego,
to the Grandma
por
Sun, and to
calentarnos
the
y por darnos
and to the fire,
ese calor que necesitamos como seres
to
vivos.
give us warmth,
Pedimos también al Nahual
the
que
warmth that
nos
we need
permita
for
encender
being
el
human
sagrado
beings.
fuego con sabiduría y
We
entendimiento,
want to
que
have
nos
this fire
ilumine para
with
que
wisdom
desarrollemos la inteligencia que a todas y a todos
that led
se
us
nos ha
to
concedido,
develop the
para que
intelligence
valoremos
that
y
has been
amemos todo lo
given
que
to us
hacemos
to
y lo
value
que
and love
hace cada
all what we
una y
do
uno de nosotros desde
and
el
what
espacio
everyone does
donde nos
since
desenvolvemos.
their spaces
Y también
where they
sepamos
work and when
escuchar
we work,
los consejos, la
and to know
experiencia
how to
y los
listen
conocimientos
to the
que hoy se
advices and the
compartirán
experiences
para poder
that will be
avanzar
shared today
y para
to be
ver
able
todo
to
aquello que aporta a la
move ahead and
colectividad
to
de
see
nuestros pueblos y
all
al
of
bienestar
what
de la
can help
humanidad.
us in our peoples, in our indigenous
Desde hace un momento, aquí
communities.
encendí el sagrado
Since a
fuego
moment ago,
para pedir a los
I
abuelos y a
lit
las
up
abuelas que
this
ilumine a cada
fire
persona,
to
a
ask
cada
grandmothers and grandfathers
hombre o mujer que vaya a
to
intervenir en
pass
este
this light
espacio,
to every
desde
single
desde
man
el
and
rol
woman that is
diferente
going to
que a cada
intervene
una
to
y
participate
uno
in
de
this
nosotros
space,
tenemos.
since the
Atio
roles
Shahaf,
all of them have. Now she's speaking in her language, native language.
Pedimos también mucha iluminación,
We also
mucha
ask
fuerza y energía para todo el equipo del FIMI,
strength and energy for FEMI's team to facilitate us this space, to give us this space to continue growing, moving ahead, and to continue exchanging experiences. We need to learn as well those thoughts, those grandmothers and grandfathers' thoughts, to walk together through this way. Thank you to everyone for the work you develop in your communities. We all know that here we have the chance to share knowledge, experiences, but also we need that strength in our community. She's now speaking in her native language. Thanks to all the grandmothers and grandfathers, and I also want to leave the knowledge, the thoughts, the signals that all of us decide, but that sometimes we can interpret. We also ask, so we also ask the sacred fire to guide our way. It gives us the signal to follow the right path, the right path. And I want to leave in your thoughts that advice, recommendation of our grandmothers and grandfathers that we need to find the way inside the way and not out of the way.
Gracias a cada una de ustedes y deseamos que
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot, and I wish that this space will, so that we have this that energy and that strength of the universe, and that our grandmas, our ancestors and grandfathers help us and guide us in our individual and collective life, and that experience that all of you, all of us have, that we know how to share it with others. And I hope we can be better women, better people for this space. Thank you so much for this space.
Thank you so much, Sister Orte, for very beautiful welcoming and invocation for today's session. We really appreciate you taking the time to be. We will now move forward. I'd like to invite the Executive Director of FIMI, Sister Teresa Zapita, to kindly give us a welcome address. Sister Tere, over to you.
Sakariki Buenohel, muy buenos días a cada una de ustedes, muy buenas tardes.
Morning to all of you.
Están en
Good
otras
afternoon
regiones,
to the ones that are in
buenas
other regions,
noches también.
and good
Sé
evening
que
as well.
algunas, pues ya
I know that
está oscureciendo, así que
in some
agradecemos que
places
hagan este espacio para poder estar, para poder intercambiar
it's
conocimientos
now late. I
sobre
want to
un
thank this
mecanismo
space
muy
to
importante
exchange
de Naciones
knowledge
Unidas
about
para
an
los pueblos
important
indígenas, en
mechanism
especial
of the
para las
United
mujeres
Nations for
indígenas.
indigenous peoples and
Quiero
especially for
agradecer a
indigenous women. And I
Hortensia
want to
que
thank
nos ha
Hortensia,
guiado esta
who has guided
invocación, esta
us to
reflexión,
this invocation, to this reflection,
esta parada que necesitamos hacer
to this
todos
stop
los
we need to
días
make
para
every day,
agradecerle a la vida,
to thank life,
para decir, ponernos
to
también
say,
en la protección que necesitamos,
to
tanto como
take
personas
that state of
individuales, pero también esa
protection as
protección que
individuals,
necesitamos para nuestros
but
territorios,
also the protection we need for
para
our
la
territories,
naturaleza,
for
tanto
nature,
por las situaciones
not
violentas
only
que suceden
for the
en la,
violent
están
situations
sucediendo
that
en algunos
take place and
territorios,
are
pero
are
también
happening
por
now
los
in some
efectos del cambio
territories,
climático
but
que
as well for
está
the
afectando
climate
muchos
change
países
effects
y
that is
principalmente
affecting
muchas
many
de nuestras
countries,
comunidades. Así que
especially many of our
saludamos esas
communities.
energías
So
de
I
cada uno de
wanna
ustedes.
say hello. I wanna
Quiero también
thank those energies, all of
decir
your
que para
energies, and I
FIMI, desde
wanna
nuestra misión, nuestra
say
visión,
that for
las,
FEMI,
las
our mission and
oportunidades de
vision,
formación es
the
uno de
opportunities
los compromisos
of
estratégicos que tenemos.
training
Y
is one of the
desde nuestra
strategic
Escuela Global de Liderazgo hemos venido
compromises
haciendo
we
varias
have in
acciones
since
que
our
seguramente
leadership
muchas de
school. We've
ustedes o
been
algunas de
carrying out
ustedes
some
han estado
sessions.
en nuestro programa que
I
cumplió
I
10
know that
años.
some of you have been in our
Y
program
este es parte de
that has
ese gran
now
paraguas que
10 years,
tenemos
and this is part
de
of
la
that
Escuela
big
Global de Liderazgo.
umbrella that we have
Esta iniciativa de
in our global
poder
leadership school.
seguir conversando, conociendo sobre distintos
We
mecanismos.
want to
Hoy
keep on
estamos
talking, working on different mechanisms.
preparándonos para
And today we are
poder
preparing
dialogar sobre este mecanismo, pero hay
to be
otros,
able
así
to
que
dialogue
esperamos
about
que
this
también en los
mechanism, but
siguientes
there are
meses
more. So
podamos
I hope that in
hacer
the following,
esta
in the next
parada y
months,
tomarnos un
we
par de
can make this
horas para
stop
profundizar
and
un
to take
poquito
some
más.
hours
Siempre va a ser
to
necesario
deepen
seguir
in
conociendo
this
sobre los distintos mecanismos. Son muchísimos
aspects, and it's
mecanismos que
important to know
existen en la ONU
more about these
y
mechanisms that
es bueno
exist
que
in the
también
ONU,
nosotras
and
tratemos
it's
de conocerlo y sobre todo usarlo,
important that
porque
we
estos
try
mecanismos no han
to know
sido
it and to
creados
use it,
por
because these
voluntad
mechanisms
política de los
haven't been
estados
created for
o de las
political
Naciones Unidas.
decisions
Han sido
or
lucha de
willingness
muchos
of
años
some
de los pueblos
organizations of
indígenas de mucha incidencia para que
United
finalmente
Nations.
se
It's
pudieran
been a
crear estos
process
espacios,
that
al
has
igual que el Foro
lots of
Permanente de
years,
Pueblos Indígenas,
as
y
well
así
as the
varios espacios
FIMI,
han sido lucha de los pueblos indígenas. Entonces somos
and
nosotras las
many of these
llamados
spaces
a conocer
is
y a
the
usar
result
para darle vida. Y
of
por
these
qué no,
fights of
para
indigenous
también
peoples.
prepararnos a las
And why not
compañeras, yo
to
las invito a
prepare
seguir
as well
preparándose. Me encantaría
our
verlas algún día,
sisters? I
no
want to
solo
see them
participando en este espacio,
participating more in this
yendo a las
space,
sesiones, sino también liderando estos espacios.
coming to sessions,
Creo
but
que
also leading
hay muchas compañeras
these
indígenas,
spaces, leading
mujeres de
these
distintas
sessions. I know that
regiones
there are many
con experiencia, con capacidad,
sisters
con liderazgo
from different
para ser
regions that have
expertas
experience
de la EMRIP.
in leadership
Entonces, no
capacity.
descartemos esa
So
posibilidad, esa
it's important
oportunidad. Tracémonos
that
esas
you
metas
also
de ir ocupando
have that as a
también estos
goal,
espacios de las comisiones, los
that taking part
comités
in those
de
in these
expertos,
committees,
tanto del
in those
EMRIP, que
expert
es el comité
committees,
de expertos que hoy vamos a
not
tener
only in
allí
the
a
in
conversar,
the EMRIP,
pero hay otros
that is
comités
the
como el comité
expert
de la CEDAW, que
committee, but
podemos
there are
ir
more committees that
conociendo cómo se
as the
hace la
committee of the
incidencia
Senate,
para que
to
logremos
see
que
how
hermanas
the
indígenas
advocacy
también sean
plans are
expertas y
developed
parte de estos comités.
to reach more people and to
Quiero
see more
agradecer
indigenous women
muchísimo al Fondo de
becoming experts in
Voluntarios, que
these
siempre ha
committees. I
sido
want to
un
thank
aliado
the
importante para
volunteer
nosotras como
fund
FIMI,
that
como
has been
mujeres
an
indígenas,
important
y que
ally
hoy también pues, nos va a
for us, for
acompañar
indigenous peoples,
a
and that will
través
also
de
be
nuestra
with us
hermana Isha
today
Tumano,
through
que
our sister
pues va
Natumano,
a compartirnos un poco más sobre
who's going to share
este
a bit more
mecanismo. Y por
about this
supuesto muy
mechanism.
contenta de saludar
And
y
for
de dar
sure
la
to
bienvenida
thank, to
a,
say
a Jenny
hello and
Amparo, a
welcome to
Rochelle
Jenny
y
Amparo,
a Winnie,
Rochelle,
que pues han
and
sido
Winnie,
parte de los procesos de FIMI,
who
y qué
have
alegre que
been
hoy
part of
puedan
FEMI's
estar en
processes.
este panel para
And
seguir
it's
conversando
so
sobre
nice to
estas
have them
oportunidades.
today
Y
in this panel
quiero
to talk
también
about these
invitarlas a
opportunities. And I want to
que
also
cada
thank
vez que tengamos oportunidad de ir conociendo y de ir
each time we
profundizando
have the
sobre estos
chance
mecanismos,
to know and to
tengamos en
deepen
cuenta
on
que
these mechanisms,
afortunadamente las
to
mujeres
take into
indígenas
account
ahora
that
contamos con
fortunately
una
indigenous
herramienta
women
importante
count an important tool, or
que
have an important
integra
tool
distintos
that
marcos
integrates
internacionales, como es
several
la Recomendación
international
General número
frames,
39
frames
sobre los
as
derechos de
the
las mujeres y las niñas
39
indígenas,
recommendation about
adoptado por el Comité de la CEDAW
women
en
and
octubre de
girls' rights
2022.
adopted
Y
in 2022.
así que pues ya les invito a que
So I want to
tengamos como
invite you
referente este
to have as a
instrumento
reference
y que conforme vayamos
this
profundizando en
tool,
tengamos en mente y digamos, a esto
and we want to
conecta, esto
deepen
puedo usarlo de esta
to
manera.
see how we can
En
connect
fin,
it,
esa es
how
la
we can
idea,
use
darle
it.
vida a
So that's
los
the
marcos
idea,
internacionales, a
to
los
give life
mecanismos,
to the
y
international frameworks and
conocerlas, usarlas,
mechanisms, to know them,
socializar
to
con
use
más
them,
compañeras. Muy
and
contenta
to
de,
share
como
it
FIMI,
and socialize it
recibirlos
with more
y
people,
poder
more
ser parte de...
fellow sisters. So I think she muted her audio now.
Está apagado su micrófono.
Let's.
Ok, disculpen que no me había dado cuenta que tenía mi
Sorry,
micrófono cerrado,
I
entonces
hadn't realized my
estoy
microphone was
aquí,
muted.
algo pasó. ¿Me escuchan?
Something happened.
Sí. Ahora sí.
Ok, gracias.
Can
Pues
you
les
hear
decía
me?
que muy bienvenidas, agradecemos la oportunidad
So
que
you
nos
are
da el
very
universo
welcome,
de
and I want to thank
empezar
the
un nuevo día para
opportunity
quienes estamos en
to
estas
start a new
regiones
day
de
for
las
the ones that are in
Américas,
this
pero también
region of the
agradecemos al
Americas,
universo
but also thank the
por
universe
la oportunidad de estar
for this
finalizando una
chance
jornada para quienes están
to
ya
finish
terminando el día.
a day
El
for the ones
mecanismo
that are
del
in our
EMRIP es uno de
regions.
tantos que
The
tenemos
EMRIP
en las Naciones
mechanism
Unidas y me
is one of
parece
many we have in the United
importantísimo
Nations,
que nosotros
and I
podamos seguir
consider
profundizando
it so important
esta
to
vez en este mecanismo.
deepen more
Esperamos que
this
desde
time with
EMRIP
this mechanism.
podamos
We
seguir
hope that since
pensando en
FEMI,
otros
we keep
espacios
on
estratégicos
thinking in other
para las mujeres
spaces, strategic
indígenas, para los pueblos
spaces
indígenas
for
y poder
indigenous
usarlos.
women, for indigenous
Estos
people,
mecanismos
and to
no han
use them.
sido
These
voluntad
mechanisms
política de los
haven't been
estados o
political
de la ONU, han sido lucha de
willingness or
muchos años
decision. It's been
de
the fight
los pueblos indígenas para ser creados estos
of
espacios.
indigenous peoples.
Entonces,
So
tratemos de
they've been the ones who have
utilizarlos, de
created these
conocer
spaces. So
cada vez más
let's
sobre su
try to use them to
funcionamiento
know a bit more about them,
y
about how they work, how
pues
they function,
usémoslo. Y quiero invitarlas
and
a que nos
let's use it.
preparemos
And I want
también
to invite you all
a que
to be
no
prepared
veamos estos espacios solo para ir a participar,
to not
sino
only see
también
this space
veamos
for
cómo
participating, but to
podemos
see
apoyar,
how
motivar,
we can
incentivar que
support,
hermanas
motivate,
nuestras, algunas de
encourage
ustedes
that
que
other
están
sisters,
conectadas aquí,
some of you
puedan
that are
también hacer
connected
ese rol de
today,
expertas en este
can
comité
also
del
adopt that
EMRIP
roles as
o
experts
en
in
otros
this
comités
EMRIT
como el comité de la
committee
CEDAW,
or in other
en
as
otros
the
mecanismos
committees
como
of
el
the
foro
CEDAW
permanente.
committee, in other mechanisms as the
Tenemos
permanent forum.
capacidad, experiencia,
We also have
liderazgo, así que
capacity,
no tenemos
experience, and
que
leadership.
tener miedo a estos
So we
retos,
don't have
soñar
to fear,
en
to be
que
afraid
también
or
podemos
scared
estar
of that,
liderando esos
scared
espacios,
of
así que
dreaming.
las invito
So
a
we
esto.
can leader and we can
Quiero
guide these
también
spaces.
motivarlas a
We
que
can lead these
en
spaces.
el
I will now
desarrollo
also motivate you
de estos
that in the
conocimientos
development
podamos
of
tener
these
presente
knowledges,
un instrumento importante
we have
que
in mind
las
an
mujeres
important
indígenas tenemos, que es
instrument
la
that
recomendación
we
general
indigenous
número
women
39
have, that
del
is
Comité de la CEDAW. Esta
the 39
recomendación
recommendation
39 es
for
un
women
referente
of the CEDAL.
importante que se vincula, se
This
articula con
39
los distintos
recommendation is an
mecanismos,
important
distintos
reference
espacios.
that works with the
También
different mechanisms and
tratemos de
spaces.
profundizar en su
Let's
conocimiento y
try
en
to
su
deepen
uso.
in its knowledge and
Quiero
in its
valorar
use.
muchísimo
I want to
la
value
alianza
so much
siempre presente
the
del grupo de
alliance
voluntarios y pues hoy valorar
always
la
there of the
participación de
volunteer
Aisha
fund,
Humano, que va a estar con
and
nosotras en
to value the
representación
participation of Aisha Manu that is going to
del
be with
Fondo de
us
Voluntarios
in a
y que
representation
pueda
in this
compartir su
fund.
experiencia también
And I hope
como
she can
mujer
share her
indígena dentro de
experience
este
as
mecanismo.
an indigenous woman
Y pues
inside
muy
this
contenta de
mechanism.
recibir y
I'm
de
so happy
tener
to
con nosotras a Jenny
welcome and
Amparo, a
host
Rochelle y
Jenny
a Winnie.
Amparo, Rochelle, and
Pues han
Winiko.
pasado por la escuela, así que nos da muchísimo
Well,
gusto
they've been
que
in the
hoy
school,
sigan
so it's a pleasure
vinculadas,
for us
activas y aportando
that they are
desde este panel
still with
para
us,
otras compañeras.
active
Finalmente,
in
agradecer y valorar
contributing
mucho el
since
trabajo
this
de
panel.
Joy,
Finally, to to value Joy's work, Cecilia and Femi's team that make these spaces possible with their work, experience, and leadership. So welcome to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sister Tere, for your welcome address. We will move forward, and I will now like to introduce our first speaker of the day. I think she's a friend to most of us, and we're really glad that she's made the time to be here with us today, in spite of a very busy schedule. So, Sister Ashatu Manu, welcome. A little bit about Sister Manu. Sister Manu belongs to the Mororo pastoralist peoples and is currently a senior fellow with the Indigenous and Minorities section of the UN Voluntary Fund for Indigenous Peoples in Geneva. She has worked as the National Women's Coordinator of the Social and Cultural Development Association. In this role, she has been contributing to reshaping local and international policies with regards to Indigenous people's rights. Welcome, Sister Manu. Would you like us to project your presentation on the screen from our end? Okay, so we'll do that.
Thank you so much, Joy. Thank you, Teresa, for the invitation. It's an honor to be with you all, and also happy to come back to my family, which is FIMI, because I am also an alumni of the Global Leadership School, and I'm very proud of that because that has shaped my career, my work with the civil society organizations, and today with the UN. So it's a pleasure for me to join you today and to share with you on this specific mechanism, which is very, very important to us, and which is also a mechanism specific to Indigenous people. So on the presentation, Joy, you can go to the next slide. For this session of the EMRIP, we are on the 17th session of the EMRIP, which is the ESPAN mechanism on the right of Indigenous people. And we will try to define what is EMRIP and what EMRIP is all about, its mandates, the objectives of this mandate, and also how to participate in the 17th session of the EMRIP. And also I will share with you the list of the current experts who are representing the different sociocultural regions of Indigenous people. And most of these experts are all Indigenous people from our communities, and they are there to work in line to ensure that our issues are taken into consideration when we talk about the Indigenous people and the participation in the UN mechanism and processes. And also, probably I may share the agenda of the session, which is already online, but I may highlight some of the items that will be in discussion for the session that will begin on the 8th of July 2024 and will run to 12th of July 2024. So next slides. I don't know if I'm fast or I should go slowly because the interpretation has to also follow. So yeah. So what is EMRIP all about? EMRIP, as we know, is the ESPAN mechanism on the right of Indigenous people, and it's a subsidiary body of the Human Rights Council. And the Human Rights Council was established in 2006 by the UN General Assembly and in the UN Principal Intergovernmental Human Rights Body. So the Human Rights Council created EMRIP in 2007 under Resolution 6/36 of the Human Rights Council. EMRIP is made up of 7 independent experts, preferably from Indigenous origin, and were appointed for a period of 3 years. And their mandate can be renewed once, with the aim of reflecting the 7 Indigenous sociocultural regions as defined by the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. We have, for example, the 7 sociocultural regions who are put together. We have Africa, we have Central America, we have South America, and also the Caribbean and Arctic. We have North America, the Pacific region, and also Eastern Europe and Russian Federation. We also have for the Asian part of the regions, we have Central Asia and Transcaucasia, which is a combination. of this part of the world. So wherever indigenous people are, we have someone representing these regions in the expat mechanism, and they are independent expat from indigenous origin. Next slides. So EMRIP sessions are usually held once a year, and mostly they are held in the month of July, and they last for a week. So and these sessions are always held in Geneva, the headquarters of the UN, precisely at Palais des Nations. We know that, for example, for the UN Permanent Forum, it is always held in New York in the headquarters, and the ESPAN mechanism is held in Geneva at the headquarters. Its mandate was subsequently amended in 2016 by the Human Rights Council through the resolution 3325. Next slides, please. So what is the mandate and the mission of the ESPAN mechanism? Its objective. So for the mission and mandate, the ESPAT mechanism on the right of indigenous people is mainly to conduct research and studies based on information provided by all observers, including representatives of indigenous people and states. So they can initiate a study based on the recommendations that indigenous people and equally states provide to them. It proposes topics for study and recommendations to be reviewed and approved by the Human Rights Council. And it is therefore very important that indigenous organizations respond to requests for information from EMRIP experts. So most of the time when they are carrying out these studies, they consult indigenous people and organizations at country levels and also the state to gather information, evidence information that will enable them to come out with concrete reports and data, because these are things that are very, very relevant and important to us, the indigenous people. And they can't do this research or studies without our support. So most of the time when they do the findings, they consult indigenous people, they consult organizations, and sometimes they also put a deadline where people have to bring in their input to the report they have already drafted, and that will enable them to finalize and paste on their website. So the link to the website is here. And since 2017, in line with the new mandate, because EMRIP had a new mandate based on the Human Rights Council, has been conducting cooperative and collaboration missions with countries. So some of since 2017, the expert of the mechanism can visit a country. They can do country visit in order for them to have information from this country, and also meet with the state of the representative of the country to discuss about the issues pertinent to indigenous people. For example, last year they were in Norway, where they had to visit the Sami communities, and they came out with a report which has not yet been published but will be published soon, because our colleagues are still working on the report. So the report will be available soon. And that was also an example just to show you how the experts work, because they have to go to countries, and the countries, before they go to those countries, the government have to accept their visit, and then it would enable them to come in and also do the discussions and dialogues with the country in question. Next slide, please. So in accordance with Article 42 of the United Nations Declaration on the Right of Indigenous People, which is the UNRIP, the EMRIP is also required to promote respect for and full application of provisions of the Presence Declaration and ensure their effectiveness. We know that we have the declaration. It is our declaration. We can use it, but we have a specific article in that declaration that state that EMRIP has to require and promote the respect of this declaration in countries. We know that it's just a declaration, it's not binding, but there are provisions in that declaration that we can use to ask our government, our different states to respect our right as indigenous people, and to ensure that they apply these rights and obligations in accordance with what is in the declaration. Next slide, please. So the limit of EMRIP mandate, we know that EMRI has a mandate, but it's also limited. So what is the ESPAN mechanism? What do they do, and what are they not able to do? So it can also revive or transmit complaints or denunciations. Issues at national level fall within the mandate of the Special Rapporteur on the Right of Indigenous People. We know that the mandate of the ESPAT cannot infringe that of the Special Rapporteur. We have a Special Rapporteur on the right of Indigenous people, so he has also a role to play. He has a mandate also. So if there is conflict and that requires that of the Special Rapporteur, the independent mechanism cannot intervene in that particular case. So they will refer it to the Special Rapporteur, who has to take it, the situation, and also address it at his own level based on his own mandate. So there is a difference between both mechanisms, be it with the permanent forum, be it with the ESPAN mechanism and the Special Rapporteur. Those are different mechanisms, and each of them has a way to function. They have objectives to attain, and they have specific roles to play. The UN Human Rights Council, treaty bodies, or the Universal Periodic Review, these are places where these recommendations or the studies that they carry, they have to present to the Human Rights Council and the treaty bodies. We have, for example, when a country is being revised, we call that the Universal Periodic Review. And within that framework, the Special Rapporteur or the expert from the EMRIP session, or equally from the Permanent Forum, can come in to give out their own report and recommendations to this Human Rights Council and treaty bodies, because that is where they have to understand if the state have implemented the recommendations they took or the resolutions they took, and how far they have implemented, and what are some of the challenges they encounter, and how they can overcome these challenges to address the issues in a proper manner. So another thing is that it can also, to the next slide, please. Okay, so what is the new EMRIP mandate since 2017? In September 2016, the Human Rights Council adopted Resolution 33/25, by which it amended the mandate of the ESPAT mechanism. So under its new mandate, EMRIP provides the Human Rights Council with technical advice on the rights of indigenous people. We have the Human Rights Council that happens each year 3 times. They have 3 sessions per year. And within the 3 sessions, the EMRIP expert have to have the possibility to share with the Human Rights Council the situation of indigenous people, and also provide recommendations with regard to the situation of indigenous people. EMRIP also provide to the Human Rights Council technical advice on this. No, go back to the previous slide. Yes, they provide, and also they assist the member states. No, previous slide. The next, yes, yeah. So they assist. No, yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I'm sorry for the mistakes and technical issues. So the EMRIP provide the Human Rights Council with technical advice on the right of indigenous people as set out in the Declaration on the Right of Indigenous People. They also assist member states and their requests in realizing the objectives set out in the Declaration for the promotion, protection, and realization of the rights of indigenous people. This is found in Article 1 of the Declaration. Next slide, please. So what progress has EMRIP made so far? EMRIP was able to have a study on Aboriginal people rights to education that was carried out from 2006 to 2009. We also had the study on the right of Aboriginal people to participate in decision-making 2010-2011 study. When we talk of Aboriginal people, we are talking of indigenous people. But for example, in Australia, they call them Aboriginal people. So we are using the terms Aboriginal people just to explain what the studies is all about. And then also the study on the role of language and culture. We know that UNESCO is now engaged in promoting the indigenous people's language. There was a study in 2011, 2012 on that and how they can preserve the indigenous people's language. We also have a study that was carried on access to justice. We know that indigenous people are faced with so many challenges, especially with regard to access to justice. And a study was carried out in 2012, 2013. And this study is to reduce the risk of catastrophe. This is another study that was carried out to also try to see how they can reduce natural disasters where indigenous people are found and the impact on them. We can talk of the impact of climate change, which we all know, and how it affects us. And then also there was a study on promoting and protecting the right of indigenous people while respecting their cultural heritage. That was a study carried out in 2014, 2015. All these studies, the reports are available on the website of the EMRIP, and you can have more details on this report, on the specific topic and on the issues they raised, and some of the recommendations they also raised and shared with the Human Rights Council. So these are just guide informations that will enable you to go deeper into the different studies and have a deeper understanding on the different studies, on the outcome of these studies. Next slides, please. So also we had the experts group was also able to carry out a study on the right to health for indigenous people with a special focus on children and youth. We know that indigenous people in most cases live in areas where access to social services are very limited, and they had this study to understand better how indigenous people's health is being taken into consideration, especially that of children and equally of youth. We also there was also a study on good practices identifying and problems encountered by indigenous people with regard to business activities and access to financial services. That was in 2017. And we know that there is a forum on human and business rights that happen each year in Geneva. And we also have regional meetings that happen, for example, in Asia, in Africa, and also in the Pacific. So we also had a training in 2018 where they talked about a free, prior, and informed consent, which we all know is very, very important and critical to us as indigenous people, because if there are projects or development issues that has to happen in a territory where indigenous people are found, their free, prior, and informed consent has to be taken into consideration and must be respected. And most of the time, this free, prior, and informed consent is not respected, and the rights of the indigenous people are continuously violated with regard to this particular issue. And we need to understand that we have the right to, speak out. We have the right to defend our land and territories. We have the right to defend our resources. And this can only be done if our consent is taken into consideration. Next slide, please. I think there is a technical issue from your end. Let me see if I can have my presentation from this end. Okay, next. Okay, good. So, no, behind. Yes. No, this. Okay. I think you have to go back again. Hello, Joy, can you just... one slide behind again, I think. Okay. Okay, yeah. So yes, we were here. And so there are different studies with different thematic issues that I cannot name all here. In 2019, there was another study. In 2020, in 2021, 2022. And the recent study is that of the impact of militarization on the right of indigenous people. And we know that this is something very critical to indigenous people. And this was a thematic, the theme of 2020, 23 session of the EMRIP session. And we all know that the impact of militarization on the territories of indigenous people is alarming, and we have all been affected in one way or the other, and a particular study has been carried out. So you can also go online to have the result of this study and the different recommendations that were made to the Human Rights Council. Next slide, please. Yes, so now for all the studies that I talked about from the different years, you can have them through the link below. I hope Joy will be able to share the link with you all. So the link is will enable you to have all the information on the different thematic studies that have been carried out by the expert mechanism on the right of indigenous people. And these different studies have detailed information about where they were able to carry the studies and the outcome of these studies. Next slide, please. Okay, so how can I take part in the session? We are all preparing to participate in the 17th session of the expand mechanism. And for you to be able to participate in the session, there are certain things you need to fulfill in order for you to participate. So firstly, you have to be a representative of an indigenous organization, and for most of the cases, it should be with a consultative statute on the ECOSOC. Also, we have representative of indigenous organization and NGOs not in consultative status with ECOSOC. So it is not we will not say it is imperative for you to have the ECOSOC status, but as an indigenous organization, if you have the financial support to be able to participate, you can register and participate. We also have academics and experts on indigenous issues who participate in the session, and we also have national human rights institution. For example, each country, you have the National Human Rights Council, the National Human Rights Commission, and these commissions can also participate in this session. So it is open to all these categories of persons and organizations and also institutions. Next slide, please. So how do you register to make an oral statement on an agenda item? Based on the agenda in the draft agenda of the session, you have to choose which item you will want to do your statement on and draft your statement based on that item. And during each session, the EMRIP deals with a defined list of items on its agenda. Participants who are registered for EMRIP sessions can request to make a presentation on these different items. So based on the different items on agenda, you have to choose which agenda item you would like to draft your recommendation, your statement and recommendations, and to who are you addressing this statement. Because sometimes we are talking to our stakeholders in different capacities, which is our own government and also the international community. So we need to know to whom we are addressing this and what are some of the recommendations we are putting forward. And those recommendations are taken into consideration by the Secretariat of the EMRIP, from our colleagues and also from the expert, where after that they have to analyze and put everything together in order for them to ensure that your recommendation, your issues have been raised and have been taken into consideration. To find out when the various agenda items will be dealt with, please, you have to refer to the work program of the session. For example, for this year work program, the agenda is already on the website, and it is available on the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights website, where you can have the specific information in both languages, French, Spanish, and English. The Secretariat set a deadline for oral statement, and for each agenda item to which the chairman announces during the session. So if you miss this announcement, you have to contact EMRIP Secretariat for you to be able, if by chance there is space for you to be able to do or deliver your statement later on. And for this year, there is innovation on the registration. The Secretariat will open registration for online list of speakers from the 1st of June of July to the 5th of July, and it will be closing at 6 p.m. Geneva time in the evening. So if you want to do your statement, you can also register online from the 1st of July to the 5th of July, where they will be closing the online registration. That is just an innovation for this session. But notwithstanding, during the session, you will be able to register on the speakers list at the side of the hall where there will be a secretariat, and then it will enable you to register for the item in which you want to deliver your statement. The statement should not be above 3 minutes. That is the regulation, and it can be less than 3 minutes, but not above 3 minutes. After 3 minutes, your microphone will be off, and you will not be able to deliver what you wanted to deliver. So you have to start preparing for your statement earlier enough, and to ensure that you have registered on the speaker list before the item is taken on discussion. So please ensure that you already have registered for the EMRIP session if you are planning to come for the EMRIP session. And the deadline for registration is 1st of July 2024, 6 p.m. Geneva time. So please, for those who are here and who want to participate and have not yet registered, please do that before the deadline, because the Secretariat is very clear on this. There will be no exception. Even us receiving the grantees and equally the fellows, we have no exception, even though it is our colleagues doing this, but we have no exception. So we are calling on everyone to register before the deadline, and the deadline will be on the 1st of July. So for the online registration now to speakers list, it's available from the 1st to the 5th of July 2024. Next slide, please. Okay, so I've already talked about that. Also, you have to don't forget to indicate the agenda item to which your statement has to be delivered. This is very important because we have different agenda items, and you have to be precise on which agenda item you will be speaking on, and your statement should be referring to that specific agenda item. Also, for the online, the link is down. The registration is available on www.events.ohchr.org. I think Joy will be able to share the link with you, because this is the online registration, as I earlier said, and it will begin on the 1st and will end on the 5th of July. Next slide, please. And also, just to say that when you are doing your registration to speak, for you to deliver your statement, it has to include your name, the organization you are representing, and also maybe the community, because those are informations that are very, very important. In the past, there have been issues with some people who, after delivering the message, they are victim of reprisal. So also, this online registration is a strategy for the office to reduce reprisal on the people who are, maybe wanting to register and their government is sitting in the hall observing. So that's why this online registration have been included this year, in order for us to reduce reprisal and intimidations from indigenous people and also from other stakeholders. Next slide, please. So how do you make your oral declaration or oral statement? Before you speak at the meeting, you may be asked to provide a copy of your statement to the conference room attendant for distribution to the interpreters and other organizations. So what we advise is that when you have complete drafting your statement, print it for maybe 15 copies, for example. You share with the interpreters who will be in the booth, and also share with those who has to, keep this declaration in the archives of DOSIP to enable you to come back years after and see what you were able to read out or what you were able to contribute. So this is also a way to ensure that there is continuation. How can I put it? The English language. The word is not coming. So like, how do you ensure that the archives are there for the next generation? So that is why when you prepare your statement, please do some copies, and you can have the support of DOSIP in printing that and also sharing with the different entities in the hall, especially to the interpreters. And you have, when you're reading your statement, please go slowly. It's 3 minutes, we know, but you can go slowly in order for the interpreters to capture what you are saying and also transmit it for everyone to understand you, and also be able to read your recommendations, which are very, very important. And if, for example, you are not able to read out everything, just read the introduction and your recommendations, because recommendations are what is more required from your statement. So make sure that your recommendations are read before your 3 minutes in order for you to be in line with the time frame. You also have to, as I earlier said, you can also share your statement with DOSIP earlier enough for them to help you print, and then you can also send it to the email address in the presentation, which is documentation@dosip.org. When you draft your statement, you can share with DOSIP, and then they will be able to keep it in their archive for future informations or future generations to also see what you have done, and also have it on the website of DOSIP, where you can also go through and see what others have proposed in order not to repeat the same recommendations all the time. You can also go on the DOSIP website where the archive is for declarations, and also look at it to see what has already been said and what you think is necessary to be shared. Next slide, please. Okay, so we also have alternative. You may ask to email your declaration in advance at statement@un.org. This is also a way for the Secretariat of the EMRIP to receive your declaration on time and keep it, and can publish it later on in the website. So this is also very important. So if you feel like it's necessary for you to share with the office, please do, and use the email address on the presentation to share the statement with us. When the session chairman invites you to speak during the meeting, you have to raise your hand and switch on your microphone. State your name and read out your statement. Keep strictly on the allocated speaking time, which is 2 to 3 minutes, but we have been confirmed by our colleagues that it will be 3 minutes. So your time is 3 minutes. Please speak slowly and ensure that you have quality interpretation, because there is no need for you speaking and the others were not able to listen to you or to hear what you want to say. That will have no impact. But if you speak slowly and straight to the point, it will enable everyone to understand you, and to maybe, have people who come back to you and say, we need more clarification on what you have talked about or the situation you raised, and how you can network and build synergies to address the issue back in your own country or in your region. Next slide, please. So before the session itself, which is on the 8th, there is the Indigenous caucus, and it's very important for everyone coming to the session to be part of this caucus. Indigenous people will always organize caucuses to prepare themselves, to have strategies they will use to ensure that their issues are taken into consideration during the session. It is your mechanism, it is your space, and you have to use this space. So make sure that you participate in the Indigenous caucus, and also to ensure that the Indigenous caucuses, as we always say, are confidential. The information should be just within the cycle of Indigenous people. It should not be out of the hall. So making sure that you are part of these caucuses, but don't share this information with others. You have to keep it within the indigenous cycle. And also, you can also have joint statement, for example, as a region or as a group of indigenous people. For example, the caucus can have a joint statement, and someone will be designated to read the statement on behalf of the indigenous caucus. So those are things that happen all the time. And you can also have regional statements, for example, Africa, Asia, Latin America statement. So it depends on what you want and how you want it to be. There are also ways where you can avoid being intimidated by your own government. You can do your statement and ask someone else to read that statement on behalf of your group or on behalf of your community. Those are also strategies to avoid reprisal and also intimidation from your government or any other person that may be in the hall and which does not want to see you raise this issue. So those are some of the things that you need to take into consideration. And the caucus will be on the 7th of July on Sunday before the EMRIP session. And also, just for information for those coming, the voluntary fund will be organizing a training on the 6th of July on how to draft statements, on how to prepare better for the session, and also how to ensure that our participation is efficient and effectively felt when we participate in the session. So we will be having a training on the 6th, and then the caucus will be on the 7th, and then the session will start on the 8th. Next slide, please. So as I was saying, there will be interpretation for the caucus that will happen during the weekend. We have interpretation with the support of our partners that will be available. We have English that will be available. We have Spanish, we have French, and we also have Russian. So 4 languages will be available for interpretation during the caucuses. As I earlier said, the discussions during caucuses are confidential and has to remain within the cycle of indigenous people. Next slide, please. So we also have parallel and cultural events that happen within the session. So between the 8th to the 12th of July, during the EMRIP sessions, we will also have side events. And these side events usually take place from 1 to 3 p.m. between 1 to 3 p.m., which is when the official sessions are closed. And also sometimes very early in the morning, you can have a side event. And just for your information, for the voluntary fund, we will be having our first side event on the 8th of July at the Palais des Nations. I will share with you the detailed information on the hall and everything in the days ahead. And we will have the second side event on Thursday, which will be on the Indigenous Fellowship Program, because right now we are receiving 48 fellows from different countries speaking 5 languages. We have Portuguese, French, Spanish, English, and Russian. So you will have the opportunity to know about the Indigenous Fellowship Program as well, and also the opportunity to apply for this important Indigenous Fellowship Program, which will enable you to understand better the UN mechanisms and also the different tools and processes that you need to involve yourself in and be part of. I know that I have some of our colleagues here who were part of this incredible fellowship program, and today they can just testify how the fellowship has enabled them to grow, being in their career or in the day-to-day life of their engagement when we talk of human rights issues. If you want to also organize side events, for now it is already closed. So I'm sorry to say that the Secretariat has already closed registration for side event, which was earlier enough, and there is no possibility, if you have not yet registered your side event, it's not possible right now to do that. But I know that, for example, if FIMI is coming, I know that FIMI may organize a side event as well. They just need to share with us the information, and we can disseminate to every indigenous person that we know in order for people to come to your site event. So these site events are also very important. These are moments where indigenous people share in details some of the issues they go through, and also invite some stakeholders to come in and share also, and also give lesson learned and experience sharing. So it's a very important moment as well, and it happens between 1 and 3, in most cases 6 to 8 sometimes, and also very early in the morning. Next slide, please. So meetings with other key players on indigenous issues on the sidelines of the session. So, for example, it is possible to also, during these sessions, have appointment with the special rapporteur on the right of indigenous people. The chair of the permanent forum will also be in Geneva by then. So you have the opportunity to meet with these different stakeholders who are people who work for you and have the possibility to influence decision in the decision-making arena. So this is also a moment where you can have bilateral meetings with stakeholders, maybe, for example, the Canadian government or the Australian government. Those are people that support the Indigenous Voluntary Fund. So you can meet with such people and share your issues and see how they can also support your work at country level. So, and also you can meet, for example, maybe, for example, we can take the case of Africa, where right now we have the Congo Democratic Republic that has a specific law that protects indigenous people's rights. How do we, the other countries around that, make sure that we also ask the DRC government to lobby our own government to have a specific law on indigenous people in those other countries where the recognition is still a very big problem. So those are examples, and you can meet different stakeholders, you can meet different donors, different partners and institutions. Academias are very, very important. Universities, they play an important role in also ensuring that our rights are taken into consideration. So we can meet all these different stakeholders and have bilateral meetings on, or exchange with them our issues and see how they can support us in one way or the other. So this is also a moment where you have to create networks, you have to create synergies, and you have to work together to ensure that your issues are addressed. Next. Just few reminders for efficient and effective participation in the ESPAN mechanism. First, you have to plan several weeks in advance for all the formalities. For example, visas, registration, and logistical procedures required to take place during the EMRIP session. You have to carefully study the agenda, the program, and documents related to the session, which are on the website of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. The June publication of DOSIP, Update and Informative magazine, presents a comprehensive and impartial summary of the papers read during the previous EMRIP session. So as I was earlier saying, when you share your statement with DOSIP, they will keep that in the archive, and that will enable those who are coming for the first time to these processes to also have an idea on how to do that and how to also use what the others have already done before to be able to draft your own statement and be able to deliver your statement accordingly. You have to also prepare your speech well, like you have to choose a specific agenda item to which you will have your speech, and it should be directly addressed to with a simple, clearly, and comprehensive diplomatic language as well, because when you are recommending or you are calling on your state or your government to act for your issues, you have to use diplomatic language. You can't just openly insult your government, for example. So you have to use language that will, make them understand that they have to do something, but in a very polite manner. Make, as I earlier said, at least 15 copies of your presentation or your statement, and then you have to speak slowly, because if not, the interpreters will not understand you and will not enable you to pass out the message the way it has to be. People speak different languages and we all have to understand each other. You have to actively participate to Indigenous caucus meetings. If there are more than one caucus meeting, you have to be in those meetings in order for you to strategize as a group, and also to see how you can network and bring more opportunities as Indigenous people, and reflect to ensure that you work in synergy. And also we have the UN agencies that will be around. For us is the secretariat, but we have UN agencies. Right now where I am talking, I am at ILO office. So you can network with all these people. ILO, we all know the Convention 169, which is the only convention that is binding and which is ours. So we have to know how to use all these mechanisms and ensure that our issues are taken into consideration. The ILO Convention 169, for example, in Latin America, many countries have signed that and ratified, but in Africa, we have just one country. In Asia, I think it's just one country. So how do we ensure that this convention is signed and ratified by our different countries, and the implementation process, how does it go? How do we monitor and ensure that the process, the convention is respected? And also, how do we evaluate the government on so far the implementation process of this convention? So those are things that those are moments that you have to use these opportunities. There are also NGOs, big NGOs that support Indigenous people's work. How do we network with these NGOs? How do we share with them? Those are the moments where you have to use this in order for you to be efficient in your participation during the session. Next slide, please. So yeah, now we will share with you the members, the expert of the EMRIP, who are representing the different regions. So we have Binota for 2024-2027. We have Binota Damai from Bangladesh, which terms will run till 2026. And we have Miss Sherry Lightfoot from Canada, which terms will end in 2027. We have the guy from Ethiopia who is representing Africa. He's just a newly appointed expert. So this session will be his first session because he's replacing another lady from Uganda that was representing the African region. So his mandate is up to 2027. And then we have Sambo from the United States of America. That mandate will end in 2026. We have Miss Antonina for the Russian Federation, which mandate will be ending in 2025. Then we have Anexa Alfred from the Latin American region that will be ending her mandate in 2025, and she's from Nicaragua. And then we have Valven Toki from New Zealand, which is the Pacific and also some part of Europe, which mandate will be ending in 2025. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 7 experts in that mechanism that represent us and also have a role to play in influencing the participation of Indigenous people in decision-making arena, especially in the Human Rights Council. And just for your information, the UN Voluntary Fund will be supporting 16 grantees. Just after the EMRIP session, there will be a workshop on enhanced participation of Indigenous people in the Human Rights Council. So they will be arriving in Geneva on the 16th and will be departing on the 20th of July. So they are coming. This is the first workshop where Indigenous people will be engaging with the Human Rights Council directly to see how Indigenous people can be part of the Human Rights Council and where decisions are being taken. So that is a very important meeting as well. And those who are coming are people that represent the 7 sociocultural regions and have been in these processes for a very long time, and will be the people talking with the Human Rights Council to see how we can also have a seat in that Human Rights Council and also be recognized as such. So it will also be a very important meeting, but it is the first session, so we hope to have more of this in order for Indigenous people to be able to effectively participate in these UN mechanisms and processes relevant to us as Indigenous people. So I think that is the last slide, I think. I just want to thank all of you. And if you have any question or clarification, I will be happy to come in and share. Thank you so much, Joy. Thank you, Teresa, for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Madhu. I think you really covered a very comprehensive introduction to EMRIP, and I'm sure it's been very beneficial for everyone here. We'll be taking a few questions, Manu, if you still have the time to be with us. Yeah, just a few questions, and then we can perhaps then move forward. So, sisters, if you have any questions for Manu, please go ahead. You can just unmute yourself, or you can just type in your questions on the chat box. Maybe just a reflection, if not a question as well. Pratima, please go ahead. Pratima, please go ahead and ask your question. Okay, while we wait for Pratima, there's a question in the chat box. It says, what are the modalities of organizing a site event on the margins of EMRIP?
Okay, so with regard to that, you must first of all be an indigenous organization, and you also have to develop your concept note to share with the Secretariat of EMRIP, and you have to register your site event before the deadline that is already behind us, and you will be able also, you have to provide your own translation support, because the Secretariat cannot provide translation to those who are organizing site events. So you have to require your own translation. And we all know that right now the UN is having some financial crisis. So there are many services that are not available this year. And the rooms that are available has to be, that is why they ask people to register earlier enough in order for them to be able to organize their rooms for each and everyone to have the space to organize their side event. Side events are moments where you share the work that you do, and also enable stakeholders or different participants in the meeting to understand what you do on daily basis, and what are some of the challenges, the way forward, and best practices as well, because it's not just about the challenges, but also what are some of the lessons learned that we can share with others, or the experiences we can share with others, to enable them also to use that positive experience in their own area or region to address the issues they go through. So side events are moments where you showcase the work you do, your culture, and also, network within those who are present, and also sell yourself to the world, because there are so many people around, and they are stakeholders from different parts of the world. So this is also a moment where you share, you sell yourself, and you build networks and coalitions. So it's a very important moment, and we cannot do everything during the session. So site events are there to also compensate what is happening within the sessions. So yeah, that is what I may say.
Thank you, Manu. We'll just try again with Pratima. Pratima, can you unmute yourself now? Pratima, are you still there? Okay. So we'll just take the next question, Manu. It's from Joanne, and she says, when is the EMRIP meeting taking place?
So the EMRIP meeting for this year is from the 8th of July to the 12th of July 2024. The opening ceremony will be on the 8th of July at 10 a.m. in one of the halls in Palais des Nations, the UN headquarters. So it will be at 10 a.m., the opening. And we will have the Secretariat of EMRIP. We will have also the Chief of Session for the IPMS, which is the Indigenous and Minority Session, where I work. And also we will have maybe the President of the Human Rights Council. That I can't confirm for now, but I think so. So we will have different people coming for the opening ceremony. And during the opening ceremony, we also have an invocation from an Indigenous leader. So those are some of the things that will be happening on the 8th of July at 10 a.m. Geneva time.
Thank you, Manu. I think there's a little bit of a problem with unmuting the microphones. Pratima, I'll just read your question then for Manu. So she would like to know how can we enhance our participation at EMRIP?
So for us to participate in these processes, we need to have maybe support also, because we can't travel just with our own financial means, because sometimes Indigenous people don't have that means. So the voluntary fund on the right, the voluntary fund is there for that. And the voluntary fund is supporting for this year. We have 21 participants that the fund will be supporting to participate in this session. And they are coming from all the 7 sociocultural regions of Indigenous people. And they will also be participating, they will be arriving on the 5th of July, and they will be participating in the training on Saturday, which is the 6th of July, and participating in the Indigenous caucus on Sunday before the session itself. And as I earlier said, we will be having the enhanced participation workshop just after EMRIP session, which will be from the 16th to the 19th of July. And also we have within the EMRIP participants 3 of the grantees that will be part of that group as well. So we will have 19 participants from the fund supporting Indigenous people in participating in the enhanced participation. So we have 21 grantees coming for EMRIP, and we will have 19 grantees coming for the enhanced participation. And for the enhanced participation, it was really not everyone that was supposed to be there, but they chose based on the experience of those Indigenous leaders, and will be able to contribute and ensure that our voices are taken into consideration when we are talking in the Human Rights Council arena. So those are experts from our communities who have been in the process for a very long time, who has the experience, that will be able to negotiate with the Human Rights Council for us all, and to ensure that we have a specific, like a seat in that council, because that is where all critical decisions are being taken, and we have to be on seat. It's a state-driven process, but we are requesting a space as Indigenous people in that state-driven process.
Yeah, my mic is working. You have answered,
Yes.
but I just wanted to reiterate Indigenous greetings to all my sisters. I'm from Nepal. So I just wanted, I'm asking about the same workshop, because we know that there are very limited participation who is going to be in Geneva. And it's more about who has a long experience working in this system for the rights of Indigenous people. But at the same time, I'm very much concerned about the modalities, those people who are not able to attend in those workshops for the enhanced participation of Indigenous peoples. What could be the other modalities? Because for us, as an Indigenous people, also as a belonging to an Indigenous women and also Indigenous persons with disabilities, I think there are no any single participation from these groups. And that is why we are not able to participate directly, but we're looking forward to have an alternative modality, approach, so that we could connect to our brothers and sisters and elders who are already been there, and so that we could send our concerns and issues during that process. And that is my concern that I would like to highlight. And also I would like to request you to discuss when the embracing is happening, because as a global network, we are not there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pratima. Just to say that I don't know for now if my colleagues working on the enhanced participation will be having it live. But if it is the case, we will share with you all the link to that, and you will be able to to participate online. That is the only thing. But I think women have been taken into consideration, youths have been taken into consideration, persons with disability have been taken into consideration. We can't, in the fund, we can't discriminate those different groups of people. When we are selecting, all these groups and specific needs are taken into consideration. So if this year, for example, the people who are coming, we don't have particularly maybe you, Praxima, that I know personally. We will also that does not mean that your voices are not taken into consideration. There will be women in these processes, and we have in the grantees list for the EMRIP, we have women, youth, and also the elderly person. So it's a combination. We don't have to discriminate a particular group and promote a particular group. What the fund is also doing right now is to ensure that women and youths are the most like, how do I put it? They are the ones we consider the most compared to the men, for example, because women have been left behind for so many years, and now we are promoting that equality among the different genders, and also ensuring that there is intersectionality in all those processes where we have to ensure that the voices of the persons living with disability, the women, the youth, are also on the limelight and also part of the conversation, because if we are moving, we have to move with everyone. And if we don't move with everyone, then there will be lapses, and we all know the impact of those lapses. So that's why we are encouraging women, we are encouraging persons with disabilities, we are encouraging youth in all these processes. For example, let me take the case of the Permanent Forum that was in April. We had more than 20 youths that were in New York. All the participants, the grantees were 32, and in all the lists we have like over 20 youth, which include women and men, and we also had persons with disabilities. So it's not like we are excluding anyone. We ensure that everyone comes in, but the fund is also limited. Like, not everyone will be able. We cannot support everyone. Indigenous people are so many, but we try to ensure that all the regions are represented in an equal manner. So we have, for example, FIMI that also bring in women to promote the participation of women, and we also have other organizations and partners that also come in to support the participation of women and persons with disability and youth. So it's not like we are excluding anyone. We are not excluding anyone. We just ensure that everyone has a space, and we cannot take the same persons each year. So if, for example, this year we have been able to take this particular group, we have to also ensure that we do it for the next group in order to have that equity, or I don't know how to put it in English, but just to have that balance, like, make sure that we are all in the same boat. So there is no discrimination in that. And we assure you, or we reaffirm that the selection process is really a transparent one. And you have your representative at the board of trustees. They are the ones deciding. We the secretariat, we just do the work when they have already selected. We are not the ones selecting. So we also have to be clear on that. The members of the board that are selected and representing these regions are the ones selecting. We are just coming in to do the work of the secretariat, which is to facilitate everything, but they are the ones selecting those who are coming, and they take into consideration these intersectionalities issues and ensure that everyone is on board. We don't exclude anyone. So that is just a clarification I wanted to make. But if there is an online possibility, I will let you know. I will share with Joy, and
Yes.
she will share with everyone.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm just
thank you so
talking
much.
about the
Thank you so
modalities,
much.
my sister. I'm just talking about the modalities, the alternative modalities, because as far as I realize, when it happened last many few years ago in Newark, there was a kind of process for having the alternative modality by virtually. So even if the closed meetings are provided to some persons whose representations are not there, we would love to do that, because as an alternative mode, we have been using for different session, because we know that not all the people are able to be there, but still our voices are to be there. So let's look for the alternative model and approach. This is my concern and request. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I've taken that into consideration. I would reach out to the colleagues and tell them to see if it is possible for you guys to join online. And if it is possible, we will let you know. Thank you so much, Pratima.
Thank you so much, Manu, and for everyone for asking those questions. Just in the interest of time, we will have to close this part of today's program because we still have the panel sharing after this. But I just want to say that regarding there'll be a live broadcast at 6:30 p.m. on the 8th of July on EMRIP item number 8, if I'm not mistaken, Manu. So maybe perhaps you could go to the Human Rights Council website, and you'll see all the agenda items for the upcoming EMRIP session and any live broadcast that people can enter from remotely. There will be links right there. So I know of the first one that will take place on the 8th of July at 6:30 p.m. Geneva time.
Thank you so much, Joy, for that clarification. It's very, very important. And yeah, you can follow online as well, even if you are not in Geneva. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Manu, for taking the time. We're really very grateful for you to be here with us today. So we'll move forward to the next session then. I'd like to hand over the session to Jandi, who is the moderator of today's panel discussion. But before I bring her in, I would like to introduce her to all of us. So Jandi is a member of the White Mountain Apache tribe and was born and raised on the Fort Apache Reservation in Arizona. She is a 2017 Indigenous Fellow at the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights in Geneva, 2018 Global Indigenous Women's Leadership Leader, and currently works building restorative mental health and wellness programs on her reservation. So thank you, Jandi, for being with us. Welcome, and I hand over this session to you to introduce our panelists.
Thank you so much, Joy. And good morning, everyone, and welcome to the panel discussion on Indigenous women's experiences at EMRIP. I'm honored to be moderating today's session. We have a distinguished panel of experts who will share their insights and experiences with us. So let me go ahead and start by introducing our esteemed panelists. First, we have Jenny Chikaisa. Jenny is Quechua Cayambe woman with a background in anthropology and educational sciences. She serves as a specialist consultant on Indigenous peoples at the South American Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights and has been actively involved with the OHCHR Indigenous Peoples Program and the FEMI Global School. Next, we have Rochelle Diver. Rochelle is an Anishinaabe woman. She is an expert in the area of environmental health and development, and in particular, the impacts of mercury, pesticides, and extractive industries on Indigenous women, children, and the future generation. Her work utilizes human rights frameworks to uphold the rights of Indigenous peoples. She has been a strong advocate at various UN mechanisms, and particularly the EMRIP. She also serves as the focal point for North America Indigenous Peoples Major Group on Sustainable Development. And next we have Winnie Cody. Winnie is a Nuba Indigenous woman from Sudan. She has a college degree in communication and an educational background in development and communication. She was the 2018 Sakharov and OHCHR Fellow. She has worked with the Delibaya Nuba Women Organization, Indigenous Information Network, and volunteered at Nuba Relief, Rehabilitation, and Development Organization, or NRRDO, in advocacy against violence in the Nuba Mountains, Sudan. She is an advocate for Indigenous people's rights and specifically Indigenous women, who she has been working with for the past years, both locally and internationally, and has also been involved in a language and cultural revitalization program with her community. So today we aim to delve into the experiences and advocacy efforts of our panelists at EMRIP. We'll explore their roles, challenges, achievements, and recommendations from their participation. Our goal is to gain insights that can enhance our understanding and support for Indigenous people's rights globally, and especially for Indigenous women who are advocating at the United Nations. So let's go ahead and begin by hearing from Jenny. Jenny, can you please share a brief overview of your work and your experience at EMRIP?
Hola, ¿me escuchan?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Te escuchamos bien.
Sí, gracias. Gracias por invitarme a este panel.
Thank you so much
Estoy
for
muy
inviting me
agradecida
to this panel.
con
I'm honored to be here
lideresas
with
indígenas de
leaders,
otras regiones
women
y
leaders
compartir
from
con ellas
all the regions.
sus experiencias también en el MEDPI. Solamente
I
quería
also think they share their experiences. I just wanted to
compartir mi
share
experiencia que
my
espero
experience
de utilidad
that I
para
hope
las
would
compañeras
be
que
of
participarán este año en el MEDPI.
great help
Yo
for the
no participaré, sin
fellow
embargo, sí quisiera
sisters that will
comentar mi
participate at the
experiencia
EMRIP, and I want to
en el
talk about my
MEDPI
experience
desde distintos
in the
roles.
EMRIP
En primer
from
lugar,
different
quisiera comentar
several
que mi
roles.
primera participación
Firstly,
en el MEDPI fue
I
en el
want
año
to
2019,
share that the
justamente
first
cuando
participation I
se
had in the
desarrollaba el
EMRIP
programa
was in
Médicas
2019
de la Oficina
when I
del
was
Alto
developing a
Comisionado
program
y
of the High Commissioner
esta fue mi
Office,
primera participación.
and it was my first participation in this
No tenía mucha
mechanism,
experiencia
and I
sobre
didn't have too much
sobre esta
experience
participación.
about
Entonces,
this
me parece
participation, so
fundamental
I
algunos de
think
los tips
it is fundamental and
recomendaciones que
essential.
ha compartido
I find the tips and recommendations that were shared by my colleague on the volunteer fund about the mechanism to have clarity. It's important to have clarity in our statements, and that usually when we have a lot of participation from people in the room, the time could be limited, and that sometimes we could be stopped in a statement. So that's important to be concise, precise in our presentation. So it's necessary to take into consideration for this statement in the EMRIP to have a formal register of the language regarding the topics that are being stated, and to consider as well that representatives from the states are going to be in the room, and at any given moment, from my experience, I've seen that some of the representatives of some states can stop the statements in the room. So it could be counterproductive for some of the advocates who haven't been able to go back to their countries regarding the statements. So I would like to comment additionally to this that we have the possibility to participate from different spaces, as I have already told you. For example, that this first participation that I had as part of the scholarship program in the training process. However, in 2020, I had already finished the scholarship program, the fellow senior program. Inside the program, inside the senior fellow program, I had the chance to work in the office, country office in that year, and I could also participate with a statement in the frame of the COVID effects in the indigenous peoples communities. Since this perspective, I participated as a representative of my community regarding the challenges that my community specifically was facing regarding the COVID-19 and the pandemic. After that, in 2021, we participated again, but in that occasion, I had in my role, I had to support the participation of the Kayami peoples. So it was in the frame of a training that I could develop in that moment. I had shared with a community of the Kayambi community, so we could work together to see what the topic was of that year and how we could focus the work we have developed as well. So my role in that moment was an advising role to help them to present a statement about their core topic, the main topic, in which I contributed specifically that year. And I would also like to point out that in the EMRIP of 2021, besides supporting the statement of the Nayambi community, we also presented a side event together with some fellow seniors of the region about the situation of children in Latin America, about the human rights of indigenous peoples. It was a marvelous, great experience because we could work together and we could also compare with the situation in some countries of the regions. And we could also work with some fellow seniors of these countries from Paraguay as well, in the Equator. And we could also present experiences and good practices in relation to the work with the indigenous childhood. And it was a very enriching experience that helped a lot the work developed that year in the EMRIP. I would also like to say that finally, in the year 2020, I participated in the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. I could also share with the people who were there in the EMRIP, if in that year I didn't give a statement that year, I could help other participants of the Latin American region. And from this perspective, I would like to share some of the learnings that I've had in my participation during the EMRIP. There are some points I would like to share. First, that we need to be focused in our participation, knowing the EMRIP mandate, EMRIP's mandate. It means to use our statements in a concrete way, as well as in a precise one, in the agenda regarding EMRIP's theme, to have an adequate and a proper advocacy. And we need to have a previous work as indigenous leaders, considering that we have to, and we need to be prepared and go well prepared to the EMRIP sessions regarding the studies that are going to be developed in that moment, and to have a position as organizations regarding the work that the EMRIP is going to develop that year. So, for example, we had an advocacy plan, very important, on the work about childhood work that was developed that year, and I think that it was a very positive advocacy program developed in the EMRIP. So I think that in the previous work, we developed them in the training processes. We all know the documents that we're going to deliver, and we need to prepare what is going to be said in those sessions. And also, it's also with the work we're going to develop in conjunction with other indigenous peoples. So it's important to know the participation, the active participation we're going to have in the caucuses, the work that is going to be shared with the indigenous caucuses and how this can have an impact in the expert mechanisms. It's also important to consider that in the agenda, they have fully taken into account the mechanisms of other indigenous peoples as the parallel of the indigenous peoples with whom we could have some meetings, exchanges as well. And it's important to know them to see how we can identify the frame. And I would also like to see what is the work we have after the participation in the EMRIP, that sometimes we consider that it's the participation itself, it's the work developed in it. But what I consider is that the job, the work starts with the participation and is developed, is being developed after coming back to our communities. So there, it's interesting to develop an advocacy process to see what was said in the EMRIP sessions, the process that are going to be developed in the next year, and how, since the community, we can support those processes. So I think I'm going to stop there. I just wanted to finish, to end with that reflection, what we can do before, during, and after the session in our roles, since the different roles that we have in the EMRIP. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jenny. And I think I just wanted to say that you had a very great point that I think will lead into the next question for Rochelle. Your point was about being concise and being familiar with the mechanism, being prepared and being focused. So with that in mind, I'd like to ask Rochelle if you could please share with us, how did you organize and prepare to participate at EMRIP? And in particularly, were you able to organize to be able to develop negotiations with any member states in the UN? So it's kind of a two-part question.
Great. Thank you so much, Jandy, for your kind
Gracias, Jandy. Espero ser más concreta esta vez. Solamente quería hacer una reflexión en torno a la información que ha compartido
I just want to say,
mi colega de la CNUD en relación
to
a
give you
los
some important
documentos que ya
information,
están
something
disponibles en
short,
la agenda de
regarding the
trabajo
documents that are available
para este año,
in
y
the
así
agenda
mismo se
for this
desarrolla
year,
para todos los años.
and to
Entonces
develop
puede ingresar a la página
them
web
this
del
year.
MEPI y puede
So you can
conocer
enter the
cuáles
web
son
of the
cuál es
EMRIP
el
and to know
cronograma y cuál es la agenda de trabajo para este año.
what
Y
the
en ese
program is
mismo
for this year.
espacio usted puede también
In
conocer
that
cuáles
space,
son
you
los
can also
documentos que debe
know
preparar para
the documents that you need
para
to
esta
prepare
sesión. Es decir,
for that
mi
session, for this
reflexión
session of this year. It means my reflection
a mayor preparación
is
podemos tener
taken
mayor impacto
in a way that
en la sesión.
the better you
Conocer
prepare
por
for it,
ejemplo,
the greater results
qué
we
es lo que
have.
se puede, qué es lo
So,
que
for example, to see
el equipo de trabajo, los miembros del mecanismo
what
de expertos pueden
the
trabajar y qué es lo que no
teamwork
pueden trabajar también.
can work on and
Muchas
what they
veces
can do
nos concentramos
in their
en
work.
la denuncia
Sometimes
de
we
casos específicos
focus
de violaciones de derechos humanos que si bien pueden
complaining
aportar al debate o al estudio
and
que se
as
está
well
desarrollando ese año, que pueden
reporting
sugerir
what
lo que
happens in the
parece siguiente
communities.
año, muchas veces
It could
debemos
suggest a study
entonces
for the next year,
enfocar
but
el tema
sometimes we need to
específico o la reflexión
focus and
específica a
concentrate
la
on
discusión
a
que se está
specific
desarrollando en
reflection
ese
to a
momento.
discussion that is being
Me
developed in
parece
that
que
moment.
también es
So I
importante
think
poder
that's
reconocer
important
la
to
posibilidad que
recognize
nosotros tenemos en las
possibility
sesiones del MEPI de tener una relación directa con los
in the
miembros del
EMRIP
mecanismo.
sessions
Que esto
where we have
podría ser
direct
una gran ventaja
relations
porque
with the
también
members of the
podemos
mechanism,
conocer
because
cuáles
it
son
could
los
be
líneas de trabajo
seen as an
específicas de cada
advantage
uno
to see
de los
the
miembros
work
y esta incidencia la
ways of the
podemos ver
lines,
incluso de forma
and
oral en
this
reuniones
advocacy
que podemos plantear con los
could
miembros
be
del
made
mecanismo y las
orally
reflexiones
or
que
in some
podemos tener con
meetings,
relación
and the
al
reflection
trabajo
is that we can
posterior
have.
del mecanismo, ¿no? Y por otro otro lado, la incidencia que podemos tener como
Have
haber
we
hecho estos
captured,
mecanismos,
we have
como la
participated in the
Declaración
mechanism.
Universal de Derechos de Pueblos
I'm very,
Indígenas.
dear sister, I'm
Sí.
very sorry. I appreciate your sharing. We do have very limited time this morning because the other session went over. So we do have
Perfecto,
two
sí.
more speakers we need to hear from.
Entiendo.
So thank you very much, Jenny. And I apologize for that. I wish that I could stretch out the time so we could have more time to hear what everyone has to share. But if we can go ahead and ask Rochelle, if you could please share about your experience with regard to the question that was asked earlier. I know you were just getting ready to answer the question, so thank you.
No, thank you. And I apologize, Sister Jenny, for cutting in a bit. I'm on a bit of a delay here. I live in a very rural area on my reservation. So if I continue to be delayed or cutting out, please let me know and I will turn my camera off. Just thinking of the time restraints, I'll just give a blanket thank you to all my sisters here for organizing and having me, and just jump right into my experience last year at the EMRIP. So regarding Jandy's question about how I prepared for this particular session, I had been working for a few years in the fisheries sector at UN Food and Agriculture. Here in my homelands, Naga Ichiwanang, Anishinaabe Nation, we are fishers. We are the land of 10,000 lakes here. And so I saw this as a great opportunity to use this intersection of these two bodies to create some synergies between the work being done by the expert mechanism on the rights of Indigenous peoples and on behalf of Indigenous fishers that were participating in the Committee on Fisheries at UN Food and Agriculture and other subsidiary bodies related to Indigenous fisheries. So I saw the agenda item and read the background information and was able then to start drafting a statement to be read. And we had to decide, you get 3 minutes to have your say, hopefully, if there's enough time to be taken onto the floor. And what would our ask be? What would be the most impactful? We really appreciate how strong the expert mechanism is feeding right into the Human Rights Council. So we definitely wanted to utilize that position of EMRIP being a subsidiary body to the HRC. And so one of our recommendations was going to be that the Human Rights Council take on as an agenda item in future sessions to address Indigenous and small-scale fisheries. It's important to know there was also a panel on fisheries, and so that was going to be one of our areas of target as well. Unfortunately, when we came to the session, as we see a lot of times in the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous issues, time starts to get very limited. And we saw that happening as we were going through the week. So although I had a 3-minute intervention prepared, I also had a 2-minute. And that turned out to be a good strategy because just before the panel was set to begin, they did announce the cut down to a 2-minute statement. So I encourage all of you sisters to definitely draft both a 3-minute and a 2-minute and be prepared, because we didn't have any notice ahead of time that we were going to lose that 1 minute, which, can be crucial. 3 minutes isn't a lot to give a bit of background, but also make sure that we're having time to make our ask. There was a panel on Indigenous fisheries, and I'm actually going to share this as a challenge. The panel, unfortunately, didn't have very many Indigenous representatives. There were 2 on a 7-person panel, 8 including the chair. I found this to be a bit of a gap. This is really an opportunity for Indigenous peoples to share the non-commodification of fishing, that this is our subsistence rights. This is how we survive. Mostly fisheries conversations are around markets and and livelihoods in that manner. So we really wanted this opportunity to share on how important our subsistence practices are to us. There was an academic institute that did a study on Indigenous fisheries, and that study was all of our voices included, but it was the academic institute themselves that presented on it. And the representative of the institute actually went 5.5 minutes over her scheduled speaking time. That took away the voices of 3 to 4 Indigenous peoples on the floor. So we were a bit disappointed about that and saw that as a challenge that we hope to remedy in the future. So instead of, being disappointed, we took that as an opportunity to meet directly, as Jandy was pointing out, with states and UN agencies to further strengthen our statement. Luckily, we were one of the last to be able to deliver the statement on the floor, but 17 brothers and sisters did not have that opportunity. So what do you do in that case? The first thing I did was go directly to FAO. I shared the main talking points and asked when they were able to take the floor if they would share and support the main attributes of the intervention that was delivered or drafted in any case. And then I looked at the members of the EMRIP, and you can get background information on what their specialties may be or areas of focus. And 2 of them had touched on either small-scale food producing or fisheries in particular. So they were the first to go to ask for support as well, support on the floor and support for the recommendations that we were presenting. In regards to states, we also, with the partnerships with FAO, I was able to find out who the friendly states are for small-scale fisheries, in particular Indigenous fisheries, the Friends of the Small-Scale Fishery Guidelines, they're called, and attempt to make meetings with them. Out of the 5 states present at EMRIP, we were able to get with 3 of them. So that is just another example of the opportunities you have by being in these these high-level spaces with decision makers, the ability to have bilateral meetings, and that kind of access that sometimes you're not able to get at home. So our goals were, we were able to start on that path. Of course, it's a long process. You're not going to get everything you need out of one particular session. And so that's when you start to prepare for future sessions. That doesn't just mean future sessions of the EMRIP. How can the recommendations that you are going to put forward at the EMRIP be further strengthened by using other bodies? We'll take that back into FAO, for example. How could a recommendation from the Permanent Forum help your future work or to achieve those goals in EMRIP or in other UN fora? In that regard, I just want to thank Aisha too for sharing about the training and the Indigenous Peoples Caucus. That's another place to share your positions and ask for other Indigenous peoples to maybe include your recommendations or show support for your statement in their interventions, and if they have time to speak in their statements or any meetings that they will have. Just a small correction. Actually, the training will be hosted by Project Access. It will be Saturday morning, July 6th. This is in partnership with the Indigenous Peoples Caucus and Office of the High Commissioner, obviously. And so the afternoon will actually begin the caucus. So Saturday, July 6th, the morning will be Project Access training. And Saturday afternoon will begin the caucus. And then Sunday will be the full day of the caucus. And currently, Elder Kenneth Deere is just finalizing the logistics for the site. And after that, there will be a flyer distributed that I will make sure to send to Joy and through all the other social media channels. So all the sisters here can have access and share with their networks as well. And so thinking of time, I'm going to go ahead and stop there and allow space for others. Miigwech for the time.
Thank you very much, Rochelle, for demonstrating effective negotiations with the different UN bodies and member states, and also for the message about, about how your work and your participation at EMRIP can also help with your future work. I think those are really important things for us to remember as we're developing our statements for EMRIP. So it's like a weaving of knowing what our communities need, knowing that we are the experts in our communities and what we need to ask for, as well as how this could help our future work. So it flows all the way through. Thank you for that, Rochelle. And so next we'll go ahead and go into the next question for Winnie. We would like for you to answer this question about what was it that initially motivated you to pursue advocacy work for Indigenous people's rights? And what are some critical regional issues that you brought forward at EMRIP?
Jandi,
Yes.
I think Winnie was dropped. She must be having some connection issues. She's not here at the moment.
Oh dear, I know I saw her earlier. It sounds like.
Yeah, she was here, but I can't see her anymore.
Okay. Let's see, maybe we can go back to our sister Jenny. Jenny, if you're available, and I do see it looks like Winnie is trying to connect here, so we'll keep an eye out for her. Thank you so much, dear Jenny. Maybe you can answer this question about what initially motivated you to pursue advocacy work for Indigenous people's rights, and particularly for Indigenous women. And what skills do you think are important for advocacy at EMRIP?
Gracias. Solo quería
Thank you so much.
acentuar
I just
solo
wanted
algo
to
que ha comentado
point
Rochelle.
out something that was mentioned by Rochelle.
Me
I don't know if I'm
parece
pronouncing
importante
well
considerar
her name,
cuál es la
but it's
experiencia y
important
la
to take into
expertise de la
consideration
organización.
the experience and the expertise of the organization, in this case, of our community.
Está enfocada en dos líneas, específicamente
Expertise is
en el
focused in
trabajo
two lines,
juvenil
especially
desde la organización Wambra
in the
Páramo,
work
una
developed
organización juvenil
in
que ha
organization.
trabajado desde el
It's a youth
2005
organization that's been working since 2005
sobre
in
cambio
advocacy
climático
actions
y
regarding climate change,
acciones de resiliencia y adaptación. Y por otro
and
lado,
resilience
la
action and
organización ha
adaptation.
desarrollado a nivel
And we have
comunitario.
developed
Digamos,
in our community,
construcción
at a
de una
community level.
declaración y
So the construction of a
enmarcarse dentro de un
statement
tema que está trabajando el
and to
MEMRI
be
es
framed inside a
importante en la medida
theme or a
en
topic
que
that
esta
is
experiencia de
being
trabajo
worked
que
in
tiene
the
nuestra
EMRIP.
organización
It's
sobre
important to
ese
see
tema y
how
cuáles
much
son el
experience
interés
has our
desarrollado por
organization
ese tema
in
específico
those topics and the interests,
y
in the
la
specific
defensa y
interests
promoción que
in
queremos
those
nosotros
topics,
trabajar.
and the promotion
La experiencia del pueblo
to
Cayam, por
uphold
ejemplo, la principal experiencia de
those
trabajo que nosotros
rights
tenemos
in our
es con
community. So
relación a las
regarding the
cuestiones
experience
territoriales,
that we have
porque
in the
nuestra historia como
rights for our
pueblo está
territories, because
marcada
in
en la
our
lucha en
story,
defensa
in
de
our
la
history
tierra,
for the for
del
our
dominio de las haciendas.
peoples,
Entonces,
indigenous
según esta
peoples,
experiencia de trabajo,
regarding
hemos ido trabajando de manera más
the experience that
específica
we
y
have,
estos han sido como los temas que
we've been
nosotros
working
queremos
in this
tratar.
experience in a very specific
Posteriormente, la
way.
organización del pueblo Cayambi ha trabajado
And
en
after
temas
this, the
relacionados
organization
con
of
la
the
niñez
Kayami
indígena, con la educación
town
indígena,
that's been working with the
considerando
youth,
que los
with
liderazgos
childhood,
sociales,
so we consider
liderazgos
it special
nacionales,
to lead and to guide the education, the bilingual education. They have come from the Nayami community and that have been there in this fight. So we have a background that's been developed and an experience that has been developed in our communities that allow us to have support and voice in this topic. So I would like to share this, and in the same way, I would like to highlight and to show the work as advocates, because there are many fights that our communities and our peoples, indigenous peoples, have regarding these topics. So I think it's the most important basis for this, for continue working on other projects. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. If we can go ahead and go back and ask this other question for both of you. And I know Rochelle spoke about the training that will be coming up at this upcoming EMRIP, but can you share about any side events that you have hosted and how it went for you, Rochelle or Jenny?
Sure, I'm happy to jump in. So for the last session, it's important to say that side events this year are a little there are some issues going on around costs for side events, which are quite high this year. So I did want to flag that the interpreters in UN Geneva, they require $400 for each interpreter. And so that can be up to $1,000 for a side event. That is a huge barrier for Indigenous peoples. This is something that is trying to be worked out. I don't know if Sister Aishatu can share a bit more on that, but I did kind of want to put that warning out there that and I guess it is a direct segue into answering the question, which is last year we had an off-site side event. So we partnered with DOSIP and we did an Indigenous media training. It was mentioned that last year the the theme of the EMRIP was around militarization. So we partnered with Indigenous Journalists Association to have a training on communication and by Indigenous journalists on how to effectively engage with the media, but also how to keep yourself safe. Aishatu also mentioned there can be some backlash from states, especially on such heavy topics as militarization of Indigenous lands. This can put some of our brothers and sisters in danger. And so we thought it was very important to provide a space where they could learn, have some capacity building on how to protect themselves. But we also thought it was important to host off-site so they felt safe and comfortable. So it is, we do have extra the ability for increased participation if you keep it inside the building, as it's easier for folks to walk over. But there are many venues near UNAG, United Nations Office of Geneva, that can be utilized as well, and DOSEP can assist with that. They're such great partners in helping us find space. So it was very successful, also held off-site. So I also wanted to share that that option for you as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle. And we'll go ahead and ask this one last question before we accept some questions from the participants here. Can you share a key achievement or outcome from your participation at EMRIP? And we'll just give you a couple minutes each if you can share on that question.
Es una pregunta para las dos. Tal vez podría, si estás de acuerdo.
Is there a question? Is there a question for both of them, for both of us?
Yes, just to share about your key achievements or outcomes from participating at EMRIP.
Quisiera hacer una reflexión en particular
I would like
sobre
to
nuestra
reflect
participación
particularly about the participation we have
al MEPI del
regarding
año,
the MEPI carried out in the year 2021, in which we presented a virtual statement with the Cayambe Federation, and I think that this was an important fact for our organization, given that the organization, the Cayambe organization, had developed with the UNICEF for many years, but before this, they had already developed a work in the territory in a participative way with the communities, and I think it was an advocacy space to show this good practice of the Cayambe indigenous peoples, and this work has been developed to strengthen the bilingual education in these communities. And about this, Cayambe community developed a diagnosis about the barriers, the obstacles that don't allow youth and girls to develop these bilingual skills, taking into account the youth, the boys and girls from this community, Cayambe community. So I think that it's a space, it's important to have this space to show these practices and to share this with other fellow partners from other organizations. And this also influenced the work developed in the EMRIP about the situation of indigenous youth and children. So I think this was developed, and it helped us to develop this collaboration with the community, that a work that has been developed for many years.
Thank you, Jenny. And Rochelle, if you have just any comments on that question, we have about 2 minutes.
Sure, I'll keep it brief. Thank you. I guess I'll touch on the enhanced participation, since that's a huge part of this year's session and will also take place after the EMRIP. This conversation has been happening in many UN fora. Aishatu mentioned about having ECOSOC status, or you have to register as an NGO. Well, obviously, as Indigenous peoples with our own systems and governments and our own leaders, traditional leaders, we want to be able to have our say as Indigenous peoples, not as NGOs or however else we need to, requirements we need to fill to get registered in these meetings. So these discussions did start taking place in the EMRIP space and in the Human Rights Council in Geneva. And now we're seeing movement in that, moving forward on breaking down what these changes could look like, what framework could be successful in being able to navigate and successfully bring our traditional leaders in to speak for themselves and to register themselves and to come, assert their sovereignty in that way. So this is one of the big successes. And after EMRIP, you will see the enhanced participation high-level meeting taking place to try to move forward in making the changes that the United Nations desperately needs for Indigenous leadership and traditional governments. So I think that's a great success, and we should all continue to keep an eye on this. It will increase our participation greatly. Thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle. And we have just a couple minutes for if we have any questions. Maybe we can take one question from the participants. Are there any questions? Okay. Well, I guess with that, we'll go ahead and work on concluding here. We do have some remarks that will be made shortly by Cecilia, but I just wanted to take a moment to thank you all for joining us this morning, and especially to our panelists, Jenny and Rochelle, and of course, Winnie. I know she was here in spirit, and she had a lot to contribute. Unfortunately, you know, our connectivity is an issue in our Indigenous communities. But thank you for this deeply insightful and inspiring discussion. And I just want to go ahead and take a minute to summarize some of what was shared here. Jenny, she shared a little bit about the challenges that her community faced during the 2020 pandemic. And she emphasized the importance of recognizing that we, you know, as members of our Indigenous communities, we are the experts of our own experiences. And so she reminded us to have the confidence in the recommendations that we make to our communities, or for our communities, to EMRIP. And she also highlighted her expertise in advocacy regarding climate change and the rights for our territories. So she makes it, this is a really good point that, you know, even though there is a specific conference for climate change, which is COP, we can still discuss, you know, these issues that are very important to us in our communities at the various mechanisms at the UN, including EMRIP. She also discussed the importance of framing our statements effectively and sharing our experiences to show our strength and work as advocates. And so we're very grateful to Jenny for sharing about those, also the barriers and the obstacles that they face in developing skills and stressing the need to share the space and practices and overcoming challenges. And then Rochelle, very grateful to you for providing very valuable insights into your experience at the UN, particularly again with the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, just reminding us that there are many mechanisms for us as Indigenous people to engage in. And she also discussed, you know, seeing firsthand the agenda items and the background information that's relevant to her advocacy. Being prepared, especially to condense our interventions when the time is limited. So she also helped us to remember she demonstrated for us her effective negotiation skills with the UN and member states, and noted the significance of project access trainings. And she shared with us the dates coming up during this upcoming EMRIP. So just, you know, she also stressed the need for enhanced participation and advocating for the ability of Indigenous peoples to have a say about, wanting to participate effectively without having to participate as an NGO. So in conclusion, we want to underscore the resilience, the expertise, and the strategic point of view of Indigenous women in navigating complex international frameworks and advocating for our communities. Our panelists shared valuable experiences and recommendations that not only highlight the challenges we face, but also the solutions and strategies that we can employ to overcome them. So I'd like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our panelists, and I'll go ahead and hand this time over to, I think, either Joy or Cecilia to provide the closing remarks.
Thank you, Janvi, Michelle, and Jenny, for a very insightful discussion. I now like to call Sister Cecilia for giving us her concluding remarks.
Thank you, Joy. Thank you, everyone, for your time. I'm going to speak in Spanish. Muchas gracias a todas.
Thank you so much to all of you for your time, for being here in this session.
Sabemos que hoy
We all know that today
muchas de ustedes, muchas hermanas
there are
están
many
más
of you,
preparadas.
many sisters that are very well
Ahí
trained and
están
prepared
ciertos espacios,
and are in
las que han
certain
egresado de la escuela
spaces,
del
the ones that
y eso nos
are graduates of
nos
FEMIS
motiva
school
mucho
and
a
then
hacer
we are happy and
y a
encourages
trabajar
us
lo
to do
que
and to
todos los
work
días nos desempeñamos
what every day
desde nuestros
we are
lugares, tal
developing
como ahora
and doing
escuchamos a
since
Manu,
our
quien ha sido una de las
communities.
egresadas de las
So with
primeras generaciones de la
a while
escuela,
ago we listened to
a
Mano that
Rochelle,
was
a Yandy,
an alumni of our
a
school,
Jenny,
and
que viene de otros
Rochelle, to
procesos
Jenny,
regionales.
Yandi,
Agradecemos mucho
Jenny that comes from other
que su
regional
experiencia
processes.
nos esté
We want to
formando
thank
a
all of their
nuestras hermanas
experience. We're so
que
thankful for
después
having their experiences that are training us, preparing us for
capté algunas ideas
other
también de lo que fueron exponiendo.
spaces. We also had some ideas of what
saber
they're presenting,
que
and it's
el
important to know
no es
that
un
the
espacio
EMRIP
de queja,
is
que
not
es
only a
lo que no lo es
space
el
to
MRIP.
complain.
Entonces hay que tener muy presente lo que
So we need to
mencionaron.
know what the
No
empty
es un espacio de queja. Varios de
doesn't
ustedes mencionaron hay que
have
estar
in the plan.
preparadas para asistir al METMI.
It's important to be prepared
Formarse,
to
documentarse,
attend the
estar
METP.
leyendo,
We need to
estar
train,
escribiendo.
to
Es
read,
muy
to write.
importante
That's
saber a dónde
important.
vamos a ir, qué es lo que nos
To
toca
know
decir.
where we are
Algo muy
going,
relevante que
what we need to say
me pareció
is
de
something
lo que
really,
escuché, que es
something
muy
relevant and
importante
super
vincular
important
la
that what I
experiencia de las
heard in
activistas,
this session is that
ustedes del
it's
trabajo que están
important to
haciendo en sus
listen to the
organizaciones,
activists,
con lo que se va a discutir en
to the
el
work
METMI,
that the
con la
organizations are
agenda,
carrying out,
para también hacer una
if
incidencia en
it is
METMI.
related to the agenda of the EMRIP.
Es relevante también el
It's
que hayan mencionado que
really
las
important
sesiones del
that you
METMI,
mentioned that in the
la
sessions
sesión anual de trabajo, confluyen otros
carried
actores,
out in the
como es el relator
EMRIP,
especial, en
we
donde
can work with
en donde
other
también se puede hacer incidencia.
players
Es,
with whom we can
si bien
work
es
together to create these advocacy
valioso
plans.
estar documentándose una misma o con un
So
grupo de personas,
we all know that it's
pero
important
también
to having information
es qué
from the
mejor
community
que
for a group with a
formarse
group of
entre
people, but it's
nosotros,
also
que formarse
important
con
to
hermanas
be
que
prepared
han
and
tenido la
to be
experiencia
trained
de
with the same
participación en
sisters
este mecanismo
that have
desde
joined
sus
this
vidas.
experience of participation in this
Tal
United
como
Nations
mencionaron,
mechanism.
es uno de los tres
As was mentioned,
mecanismos, el METPI
as
de
you
las
mentioned, is
Naciones
one
Unidas
of
para
the
los
three
pueblos indígenas,
mechanisms
pero para
given by the
nosotras
United Nations for Indigenous
subrayado
peoples,
en
but for all
decir
of us,
que
we
no
have
es el
highlighted
único en el que
to say
los
that
pueblos
is not the
indígenas
only one
organizados deben participar y
that
pueden
the
participar.
indigenous
Es
peoples,
importante
in which the
tener
indigenous peoples
referencia
can participate, is
otros
important to have as a
espacios de
reference
Naciones
other
Unidas,
spaces
pues es en donde
of the United
el
Nations
trabajo de FIMI está dirigido y en
in
otros
which
espacios de discusión de derechos
FEMI's
humanos
work
hay que
to
tomarlos
which
en cuenta
FEMI's work is directed
para
to, so we need to
seguir
take it into account
formándonos, para seguir
to keep
apuntando a incidir en ellos.
training, preparing
Es todo de
ourselves.
mi parte. Agradecemos
That's
su
all.
tiempo, su participación y por
I
favor
thank you. I
estén
want to thank you
atentas a
for your
otros
time, your participation, and please
talleres, a otros espacios de
be
discusión que
attentive
estaremos convocando.
to other workshops and
Muchas
discussion
gracias.
spaces we will be sharing with you.
Gracias,
Thank you
Joy.
so much. Thank you, Joy.
Thank you so much, Sister Cecilia. So we've come to the end of our program. I want once again like to thank each and every one of you, and I wish you all a happy, productive, healthy week ahead. Thank you so much, everyone.